Hello, it's Dr. Ashley, and welcome to your last lecture of Course 7276. Today we're going to give a brief introduction to pharmacy law. The purpose of today's lecture is to give you all a brief introduction into pharmacy law and then how that ties to practice management. We're going to start at ground zero and first talk about the various terms and definitions used in the Texas Administration Code, why those are super important to understand, and then how we use those terms and definitions to understand the importance of the Texas Pharmacy Act. Then we're going to talk about the makeup of the Texas State Board of Pharmacy, talk about the members that serve, and really talk about their responsibilities and duties that are required of them. And then lastly, we're going to summarize the licensing and CE requirements pertaining to various personnel of pharmacy. This is extremely important to you all as you graduate from pharmacy school, to talk about their licensing requirements for you all, and then talk about when you become a supervisor, if that's in your cards, what is required of your personnel. So what's required of your technicians and other staff pharmacists that work under you? What amount of CEs do they need? Are they licensed correctly? Are they maintaining that license? Is their license inactive? So those are all important questions that you have to have as a supervisor. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's start the introduction to pharmacy law overview and talk about the Texas State Board of Pharmacy and other law tidbits. The Texas Pharmacy Act is the primary law governing the practice of pharmacy in our great state of Texas. The Act establishes the Texas State Board of Pharmacy, which may be abbreviated in this lecture as TSBP, and also provides the board with certain authorities and responsibilities in regulating the practice of pharmacy in Texas. The purpose of this Act and of the Texas State Board of Pharmacy is to promote, preserve, and protect the public health, safety, and welfare of Texas. This is a very important part here because a lot of people, especially maybe new pharmacists or folks in pharmacy school, might have the understanding that the Texas State Board of Pharmacy protects them as a pharmacist. Well, in fact, the opposite is true. The Texas State Board of Pharmacy enforces their laws and regulations to protect the people that we serve, so our customers and patients in the state of Texas. So please know the difference there. When you open up the physical law book, or since it's 2020 and technology is running rampant, they now have all versions of the law book online and available through the Texas State Board of Pharmacy website. With that being said, any chapter or act or rule that starts off with a different section is going to have a lot of various definitions, and it's really important to make sure that you review those definitions and understand them. Many of those definitions are consistent in different acts, such as controlled substance, dangerous drugs, designated agents, the practice of pharmacy, and a practitioner. There's over 40 terms that are defined in the Texas Pharmacy Act, section 551.003, and we're going to talk about some of those in a second. But there's also some terms that might sound familiar between the acts, however, they might be defined differently. So take some time, especially before diving through these different acts and chapters, and just reviewing these definitions to have a better understanding of what's going to be talked about within that section. Some examples of important definitions found within the Texas Pharmacy Act, section 551.003, are the various classes of pharmacy. We're going to talk about one today, and that's Class A pharmacy, which is a community pharmacy. That license authorizes a pharmacy to dispense a drug or device to the public under a prescription drug order. Other classes of pharmacy include the following: Class B, which is nuclear. This is a license, this license authorizes a pharmacy to dispense a radioactive drug or device for administration to an ultimate user. Class C pharmacy, which is institutional or hospital pharmacy, and it's a license that may be issued to a pharmacy located in an inpatient facility, including a hospital, or a hospital maintained or operated by the state, a hospice inpatient facility, or an ambulatory surgical care center. A Class D pharmacy is a clinic pharmacy, and this can be a license authorized for a pharmacy to dispense a limited type of drug or device under a prescription drug order. And then lastly, we have a Class E pharmacy, which is a non-resident pharmacy. And the best way to remember this one is this pharmacy is not located in Texas at all. It may be issued to a pharmacy that's located within another state, whose primary business is to dispense a prescription drug or device under a prescription drug order, and then deliver that drug or device to the patient, including a patient in this state, by United States mail, common carrier, or delivery service. A lot of times this one can be called mail order pharmacy, or other types of pharmacy that just basically are not included in Texas but service Texans. All right, let's spend a little bit of time and get in the meat of the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. The Texas Pharmacy Act, Chapter 552, explains this. It's composed of 11 members. 7 of those members have to be pharmacists, and there has to be representation for pharmacists employed by both Class A, which is community, and Class C pharmacies. One of the members has to be a technician, and there has to be 3 public members. Qualifications to become on the board include the following. A pharmacist must be a resident of Texas, licensed for 5 years preceding their appointment to the board, has to have a good standing license with the State Board of Pharmacy, and they have to currently be actively practicing pharmacy. Pharmacist members, and including their spouses, cannot be a lobbyist on behalf of a profession regulated by the board, an officer, employee, or paid consultant to a Texas trade association in the healthcare field. Public members and their spouses cannot be registered, certified, or licensed by an occupational regulatory agency like a nurse or a physician. They cannot be employed by or participate in the management of a business or other entity regulated by the board or receiving funds from the board. They cannot be an owner or a person or other entity regulated by the board of reviewing funds for the or from the board. And then lastly, they cannot be an officer, employee, or paid consultant to a Texas trade association in the healthcare field. Membership or appointment to serve on the Texas State Board of Pharmacy is done so through the governor with advice and consent from the Senate. Each membership term is for 6 years, and a member may not serve more than 2 consecutive full terms. Since the board is made up of 11 members, just know that all 11 members do not flop or rotate through their membership at the same time. A lot of times you'll have 5 members that will stay on, and then in 3 years the other 6 will maybe switch or change, and then another 3 years those initial 5 will then switch or change, so on and so forth. So what that means is basically half the board will come up for re-election or membership service every 3 years, so that way the board doesn't turn over all 11 members at the same time. The State Board of Pharmacy is the ultimate rulemaking authority for the profession of pharmacy in our great state of Texas. It's responsible for administering and enforcing the Texas Pharmacy Act and the rules and other laws related to the practice of pharmacy. It does so by regulating the practice of pharmacy, by issuing and renewing licenses, by determining and issuing standards for recognizing and approving degree requirements for the colleges of pharmacy in our state, for specifying and enforcing the requirements for practical training, including internships, and by regulating the training, qualifications, and employment of pharmacist interns and pharmacy technicians. As you can imagine, it is unlawful to practice pharmacy in Texas without a license or to fraudulently obtain a license. The reason why I felt this was important to put this slide in this presentation was because about 6 months to a year ago, there was a lady from California who actually accomplished practicing pharmacy in that state without a license. She began her career as a technician and ultimately decided it would be fun to make up a fake license, and she was actually employed by Walgreens for about 10 years, working illegally as a pharmacist in that state. So you can imagine it's very important for employers, if it's Class A, Class C, or whoever you decide to work for when you graduate, they have gotten a lot stricter on making sure that your license is validated, it's up to date, and it's in good standing. So just know that going forward. In Texas, though, there is no grace period when renewing a license for your pharmacist license. If you fail to renew your license on time, you cannot legally practice. There are some caveats to that with some dates like 30 days to 45 days to 90 days after your expiration. But for purposes of this presentation, we're not going to get into that. But what I do want you to be sure and understand is that you worked really hard to get that pharmacist license. So making sure that you renew on time is what you need to focus on. Also know a person may not use the title of registered pharmacist or RPH or similar words of that nature unless the person is actually licensed to practice pharmacy in the state of Texas. To become a licensed pharmacy in the state of Texas, as y'all have probably heard of this term before, you have to take the NAPLEX. To qualify to take that test, you have to be at least 18 years old. You have to complete your internship of at least 1,500 hours. You have to have graduated and received professional practice degree from a licensed college of pharmacy in the state of Texas. You have to pass the NAPLEX and the MPJE, which is the law exam, with a score of at least 75. So 75 on those exams is passing. And you had to have not had your pharmacist license in another state restricted, suspended, revoked, or surrendered. Now, I don't want to talk about this in depth because it's not going to happen to you guys at all. You're going to take and you're going to pass the NAPLEX and the MPJE with flying colors the first time. But just know that if an applicant does fail the NAPLEX or the MPJE, he or she may retake each of those examinations 4 times or 4 additional times. So you have your initial time and then you can take it up to 4 times after that for a total of 5 times total. If for whatever reason it's not passed the 5th time, there are some remediation opportunities that the state board will or could grant you, or that person that may not have passed. A lot of times it's an agreement between that person and the state board to obtain more internship hours or additional schooling or whatever the case might be. It's just on a case-by-case basis, and there's not like a blanket, I guess, rule or track to overcome that. But like I said, nothing to worry about for you guys. You're going to pass both exams with flying colors the first time through. To become licensed in Texas by reciprocity, a pharmacist must provide proof of initial licensure by examination and that the current license or any other licenses have not been suspended, revoked, canceled, surrendered, or otherwise restricted. Since Texas is a reciprocity state, all the pharmacist has to do is, if they are licensed in another state, is come to Texas and basically pass the MPJE with a score of 75 or higher. So good thing about Texas is it does reciprocate. However, if say you, for instance, you get your Texas license here and you're a practicing pharmacist here, and maybe your spouse gets a job relocation to another state, or you're single and you just want to go have fun and maybe practice in a different state in the country, it's really important to make sure that you call the board of pharmacy in that state, because some states out there do not reciprocate and do not allow that. You will actually have to take the NAPLEX over again, take their law exam to become licensed in that state. I know California is one like that, Florida is one like that, where you just can't reciprocate. You actually have to start all the way over and take both exams again. So just know that. I know Louisiana, Arkansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, at least the states closest to around Texas, there might be some extra little tidbits that you have to do, but those states you can reciprocate in. So just make sure that nothing has changed, though, if you do decide to practice in one of those states around Texas. State registration is required before working as a technician role within a pharmacy. There are 2 different types of technicians, I could say, or classify them as. The first one being a certified pharmacy technician, and the second being a technician trainee, which can be considered as the bridge to becoming a certified pharmacy technician. Technician trainee registration is only valid for 2 years and it cannot be renewed. So what that means, and a good example of that is, say you have an employee that's maybe a cashier or a front-end worker at your pharmacy or store. They have come express to you that, hey, I want to become a pharmacy technician one day. What can I do to do that? Well, a lot of times, like I said, the technician training is a bridge to get to there. It's a special registration that you can get from the Texas State Board of Pharmacy that's valid for 2 years, with the ultimate goal of becoming a certified technician within that 2-year time. Now, if they drag their feet and they've worked really well as a technician for those 2 years, but they never took their certification exam and that 2 years is up, they actually have to bump back down and go back to a clerk role or another supportive role. They can't work as a technician anymore until they take their certification exam to become a certified technician in Texas. Therefore, with that being said, initial registration as a technician is required by passing a board-approved certification examination, but maintaining certification is not required for the renewal of the state registration. So back in the day, you could take your certification exam through PTCB. A lot of you might be technicians out there and might have that certification today. But as long as you pass your examination and you register with the State Board of Pharmacy, it costs money, of course, to stay as a registered PTCB technician and for the registration of the state. If you drop the registration fee to renew your PTCB annually or biannually, and you maintain your state registration, that's totally fine. But just note that if you were ever to move out of Texas and you never kept your PTCB registration up as a technician, if you move to like Arkansas or Louisiana or Nebraska or Tennessee or wherever that's at, you would have to retake the PTCB exam again to become licensed in that state. So it's just kind of depending on where that technician wants to ultimately end up in life and where they want to work, as far as if they want to keep the PTCB or the board approved certification exam registration up to date, or if they just want to maintain the Texas. Either way, it's totally fine if you want to practice in Texas. When a technician becomes certified, or if an employee becomes a technician trainee, they must complete a training conducted by the pharmacist in charge as outlined in a technician training model. Now, there's different requirements for that that are dictated by the board. It's just basically training to make sure that they understand that when they are in their role actively working in a pharmacy, they understand their roles and responsibilities of what they can and can't do. And this training has to be documented by the pharmacist charged that the employee did complete it. A lot of time it's renewed annually based on the employer or the company, just to ensure that nothing has changed, or if there's any law updates, or if there's any policy or company procedure changes that they might not be aware of or maybe not fully understand. It gives them a time to actually discuss those with the pharmacist in charge to ensure that everybody's on the same page. License renewal for both pharmacists and certified technicians is required biannually, so every 2 years, and note that it expires on the last date of the assigned birth month. So for instance, if you become initially licensed in the month of April, but your birthday is in September, you wouldn't do anything that first September, but your expiration of your license would actually be 2 years from that first September at the last day of that month. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Used to before, it was based off of the day or the month that you got licensed, but that recently changed a couple of years ago. The renewal process is super easy. It's actually online. There's no mail involved with this anymore. They used to send you a mailer showing that you were up for renewal and you needed to renew, but that's changed, and I think you just get an email now. So it's all online. Like I said before, because I want to harp on the importance of this, guys, is that there's no grace period at all. So renewal and the application fees must be received in the board's office on the last day of the expiration month. So you can do the mail-in order. That's not a problem at all, but it's 2020. It's easier to do everything online. It's pretty instant, so they'll get it then instead of having to worry about the mail getting there on time. Remember, you cannot practice pharmacy if your license is expired. And if you have an inactive status, you are still responsible for paying the renewal fee. But what that means is there are CE requirements that are necessary to renew your license. So an inactive status means that you haven't completed your CEs, but you still have to pay on time to have that license maintained. You just can't practice until you become active again after you complete your CEs. Since we just mentioned CE, or continuing education requirements, let's talk about a little bit what that means for a pharmacist. So to renew a pharmacist license, a pharmacist must complete at least 30 contact hours of CE during the preceding license period of 2 years. So just an example of what that means. Say my license expires this September. Currently, right now, going into the month of May, I have 42 CE hours for this renewal period. I've definitely hit my mark of what I need, and I've obtained the CE requirements and the hours that I need. However, just because I have 42, I can't roll over those additional 12 hours to the next renewal period. Basically, when September 30th gets here, my slate is wiped clean and I start over, and then I have to obtain the additional 30 hours needed for the next renewal period, so that following 2 years. Within those 30 hours, of course, there are some specific hours that are needed to renew that pharmacist license. First, the one being at least one contact hour must be related to pharmacy law and rules for Texas. For renewals received after August 31st of 2021 and before September 1st, 2023, at least one contact hour needs to be completed annually for a total of 2 contact hours total, so 1 per renewal year. Must be related to the best practices, alternative treatment options, and multimodal approaches to pain management. At least 2 contact hours of the 30 must be related to approved procedures of prescribing and monitoring of controlled substances. And just note that this is a one-time requirement that must be met by September 1st of 2021 and be reported on the next license renewal after September 1st, 2021. Then lastly, for renewals received after August 31st of 2020, but before September 1st, 2022, a pharmacist must have completed a human trafficking prevention course approved by the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. And there's a list of approved courses. A lot of times, Pharmacist Letter and the State Board of Pharmacy can direct pharmacists to the approved courses on the websites for those institutions. And note for that that's only a one-time requirement for all licensed healthcare professionals and is not a part of the 30 additional contact hour requirements. Such a course would only count towards the general CE requirements if it's an ACP accredited course. When looking at continuing education courses to meet your renewal requirements for your preceding renewal year, sometimes you will see the abbreviation CEU mentioned. And what that equation basically converts to is that one contact hour or continuing education hour equals 0.1 continuing education unit. So usually if you can convert if it's 0.2 or if it's 0.3, 0.2 would be 2 hours, 0.3 would be 3 hours, and so on and so forth. So just because it's listed as 0.1, it's just a different conversion form to get those hours obtained that you need. Also note that, like we talked about before, the CE must be obtained during the preceding license period, so there's no rollover hours to the next period. You must keep record of your CE for 3 years after you complete, so that the state board can audit you up to 3 years after your renewal periods to ensure that you did complete their CEs during that time. A lot of times those audit requests will be done through a state board visit at your current employer or whatever the case may be. And like I said before, technology rules the world in 2020. The NABP website currently has a CPE monitoring service available that you can sign up for. The cool thing about that is that it tracks your CE completions electronically, and that can be done so through any ACPE accredited provider. So if you take a test from an ACPE accredited CE, that completion certificate or the amount of hours that you obtain from testing out of that CE will be reported to the NABP, and that way they can keep track of your CE transcript. So that way it takes a lot of the paper keeping or record keeping through paper out of the equation. You can pull those records electronically, print your transcript if the state asks for it, and then it will meet that requirement for their audit. So just know that you sign up through the National Association of Board of Pharmacy or the NABP website when you take your NAPLEX, and then that login pretty much stays with you pretty much your entire career, because it turns not only then from a testing website to register for your exam, but then it goes to where you can monitor your CE credits after that. As far as continuing education goes for a certified technician, note that no CE requirements are responsible or needed to be obtained by a trainee. The renewal requirements for a technician is 20 hours every 2 years, and 1 hour of that has to be Texas pharmacy law. And they also are required to complete a human trafficking prevention course approved by the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, and they have to meet that requirement, again, just like a pharmacist, because this is assigned to all healthcare professionals by September 1st of 2022. Let's spend a little bit of time and talk about you guys, pharmacist interns. To become an official intern, you have to be licensed through the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. Different various types of interns include trainees, student interns, extended interns, and community resident interns. As you probably know, but it's important to reinforce this, interns may perform any duty of a pharmacist provided they are working under the supervision of a pharmacist registered as a preceptor or a healthcare professional preceptor. And we're going to talk about what those duties of a pharmacist are in an upcoming slide. As you can see, the next bullet point is bolded. It's very, very important that you guys and gals know this one, okay? There are 3 things that an intern cannot do. First, they cannot present themselves as a pharmacist. They are not able to sign documents that require a pharmacist's signature. And then lastly, they're not able to supervise technicians. Not only is that information important for this course, it's important for you to understand those 3 things that you are not allowed to do as you go out on your APPE rotations. And then the last point is that when not working under the supervision of a preceptor, so say for instance, if you're employed as an intern and you usually have a preceptor on duty, but maybe the staff pharmacist that's there that day is not a preceptor, your function actually turns into a technician function. But it doesn't count in the ratio of pharmacy technicians to a pharmacist in a community pharmacy. So just know that. To me, I think it's extremely important to give back to my profession of pharmacy, and one of the best ways to do that is to become a preceptor. Now, I think you guys might have had preceptors already, but throughout your APPE rotations, you're going to come across many different types of preceptors, and some of those for me have impacted my career professionally. I learned a lot from them. I still keep in touch with some of them, and I graduated pharmacy school over 10 years ago. But they're important people, and you have the opportunity to become one yourself if you'd like. To become a preceptor, you must have to have a current active pharmacist license. You must have at least 1 year of experience or 6 months of residency training. You must have completed 3 hours of preceptor training through an ACPE accredited course. And then when your renewal period comes up, and when you renew your preceptor license, it's done at the same time as your traditional pharmacist license. You must completed 3 hours of preceptor training every 2 years. So that we talked about the 30 hours of continuing education that's needed to renew your license. Well, 3 of those hours have to be preceptor training, and that's done again every 2 years. Your license cannot have any discipline or discipline actions associated with it. A preceptor may also be a healthcare professional, so this can actually be a physician, a dentist, a vet, or a pharmacist licensed in other states serving as an instructor for a Texas college or school of pharmacy. And then lastly, a preceptor can only supervise one intern, but the 1-to-1 ratio does not apply to intern trainees or student interns that are part of a Texas college or school of pharmacy program. So what that means is, or the difference there is that, say for instance, you are employed by Brookshire's and you are a pharmacy intern at Brookshire's. You can only be that pharmacy intern for one pharmacist preceptor in that store. But say for instance you're on rotation and your rotation's at Brookshire's, one pharmacist can actually have more than one intern through the school that they are graduating from. So the difference there is, if you're making money by being employed, the ratio is 1-to-1, but if you're on rotation for a school, the ratio doesn't apply. So hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, definitely reach out to me. Well, that wraps up this brief introduction into pharmacy law and how that pertains to practice management of pharmacy. Before I let you all go, just wanted to say on behalf of Dr. Varonin and myself that we really valued our time with you all this semester. I know it was cut short due to the coronavirus, but we do hope that you did take some stuff and some information from this course that you will be able to apply and practice and use within your upcoming rotations, and even beyond that when you graduate and become licensed after pharmacy school. As always, if you have any questions pertaining to this lecture or anything else law related, please email me with questions at jeremyashley@uttyler.edu. You do have an online application submission assignment for this lecture. It's due on Sunday, April 26th by 11:59 p.m. The text is going to show you 4 different application questions. I'm just asking of you to select one of those and provide your answer in the text box indicated below. If you have any questions about that, again, email me, let me know. Good luck on finals and have a great day.